for Monday the 10th of June. I'm Stephen Ridgway. SolarWinds has addressed multiple vulnerabilities in the ServU and the SolarWinds platform. So there are a handful of vulnerabilities, but particularly bringing to your attention CVE 2024 28996, which apparently was reported by a NATO penetration tester. Let me see. That one has got a CVSS score of 7.5, so fairly serious, not a complete disaster. And it is, I believe, a flaw in a subset of SQL. So either way, various things have been addressed. Version 2024 2024.2 has addressed the vulnerabilities. So it is currently unclear whether these are actively being exploited. However, they've hit the news, so if they're not being exploited yet, they will be being exploited soon. PHP has addressed a critical remote code execution flaw that is potentially impacting millions of servers. So there's a new PHP for Windows remote code execution vulnerability affecting versions 5.x and earlier, which means that it is likely to be found, this vulnerability is likely to be found on a good number of servers out there. Vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2024-4577 and has been announced so it was discovered, I think, about a month ago, and there are patched versions of PHP, updated versions of PHP have been available for about 4 days. So, as always, make sure your tooling is up to date. That is probably the simplest thing that you can do to mitigate vulnerabilities. So if you're using PHP, and certainly if you're using PHP on internet-facing devices, take a look at this and look to see whether you need to upgrade or patch, and if so, do so ASAP. There's a new Mac operating system piece of malware. It's reported that the Moonlock Lab cybersecurity team discovered Mac OS malware strain that is designed to avoid or evade detection. It is spread via primarily cracked software. So the particular piece of software that they have mentioned in the article is a Clean My Mac crack. So Clean My Mac is a quite well-known piece of software. Scans through the Mac, looks at your settings, and assists in making recommendations around cleaning up, tidying up, and generally ensuring that the Mac is performing to its best. There's a free version, which is perfectly decent but a little bit limited. There is also then a paid-for version, and this is allegedly a cracked version of the commercial license or the commercial software. Mac software is often distributed as disk images. So this is Clean My Mac Crack DMG. .dmg. once installed, it executes a file that subsequently downloads an Apple script, which is designed to steal information from an infected Mac. The scripts can do various other bits and pieces, but it does collect and store the Mac owner's username. It sets up temporary directories to hold stolen data before exfiltration. It extracts browsing history, cookies, saved passwords, other stuff from browsers, and also looks through common directories that may contain cryptocurrency wallets. Worryingly, it also copies the Mac OS keychain data, any Apple Notes, and cookies from Safari. It is suspected that this particular piece of malware has come from a Russian speaking, they say in the article, but a Russian speaking threat actor, Rodrigo 4. So what can you do about this? Well, it does highlight that in the end, no matter how good your technical security controls are, if users are determined, they will get round a lot of the more basic stuff that you can put in place. Because, quite frankly, if you're downloading cracked software, you're already aware of the fact that it won't be correctly signed, so it will trigger the warnings around, Mac won't install this particular piece of software because it's not signed by a trusted provider, but he'll know by then how to turn off that warning and ignore the error, because it's exactly what you're expecting. You're expecting a dodgy piece of software, and you've got a dodgy piece of software. So, what can one do? Well, how about not trying to rip off software, or not being surprised that if you're ripping off software, you end up with malware on your machine. Yeah. I would also say, though, that running a good antivirus solution, good endpoint protection solution on your Mac is as important as running a good endpoint protection solution on any other device. So, Macs are pretty good at protecting users from doing stupid things inadvertently, but as I say, they won't protect you against yourself if you really, really want to download dodgy software. There are ways to do it. So be aware of that. There is malicious Visual Studio Code that is in the marketplace, but is installed in potentially thousands of devices. So a group of Israeli researchers have been looking at the security of the Visual Studio Code marketplace and have managed to, the article puts it in speech marks, infect over 100 organizations by trojanizing a copy of the popular Dracula official theme to include risky code. So if they were really researchers and they were really introducing risky code, that isn't a particularly good thing, as you can imagine. So do then be careful. There's a good write-up in Bleeping Computer that shows exactly what was undertaken, and it also shows the distribution of this malware once released into the marketplace. Really, the best thing you can do is just be careful with the code that you download. Don't treat any software repository as being by default secure. Always check, make sure that you trust the developers, make sure that you have done at least a modicum of checking, not necessarily testing, but checking of code that you are downloading. Just because it's out there doesn't mean to say it's safe to use. And then finally from me today, there's a good article in Cybersecurity News, which is a good reminder that free VPNs may not be all they are saying they are. So there are some very good solutions to requiring a VPN, endpoint VPN, out there. Some well-known manufacturers, that get very good ratings, paid for but not particularly expensive solutions. However, there are people that still think that that free is the way to go. With bearing in mind, free and open source, by the way, are not necessarily synonymous. However, for this sort of stuff, there is a fairly big infrastructure that needs to be run in the background in order to deliver VPN services, in which case somebody has got to be paying for this stuff. And it may well be you. So many free VPNs may actually your privacy by storing and selling on the data of where you are browsing, which is specifically what you're trying to avoid. Some also route your data through China, and as we all know, any data that goes to China is legally allowed to be accessed by the Chinese authorities. Which means that it is a very simple way for them to gather data. As we said before, the gathering of data is the bit that they're bothered about at the moment. What they do with it later is a different matter altogether. They just want as much information on as many people as possible, including all that stuff that previously we have thought to ourselves, oh, nobody could be bothered with that, I'm not interesting enough. Well, they've got it now and they are interested in it. So malware infections, embedded tracking, slower connections, ad delivery, browser hijacking, data collection by governments. These are all things that are going on within the free VPN world. So as always, I would be very cautious about using free VPN software. I would personally stick to reputable, well-known VPN vendors. There are a couple that are mentioned in this article. A couple of others that are certainly worthy of note. One which has a name that implies it's from the north, and another one that implies that it is quick. So have a think about those. I'm not particularly pushing any of these products, and sadly, we get no kickbacks from anybody for anything. So I've got no skin in the game. But definitely there are half a dozen or so well-known players in the security space out there that deliver very good services. By the way, if you are really concerned about privacy, and you will never be able to personally check the security of your VPN provider. However, you can look for privacy statements that say things like they do not hold any logs, so there are no logs to be to be retrieved by law enforcement. Because the issue is that law enforcement and others, or potentially malicious actors, once they can get hold of your logs, have got all the data you're trying to protect, or the connection data you're trying to protect. So you want to find one that claims to have claims not to have logged anything. Also is an organisation which is registered in a country which is A, reputable, and B, has very strong data protection laws, such that it is not trivial for law enforcement agencies or other bodies to as it were, subpoena your data. So it's difficult for them to do, and if they try to do it, there isn't any anyway. And then finally, it is worth looking to see whether these policies have been tested in court. So where governments or law enforcement agencies have demanded information and taken the VPN provider to court over it, what was the outcome? Ideally, the outcome would be the law enforcement agency didn't have the right to ask this stuff in the first place. Second best would be that having been forced to disclose, there was nothing to disclose. So definitely think about that. It is an area that people tend to forget about, although I think we do know about the importance of having a good VPN provider. So anyway, that's all from me for today. Hope you have a good start to the week, and I'll speak